Okay, get your stream. Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hisham Tilawi. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we will talk about Libya again, since the president made a speech about it a couple of days ago, and he very much explained why we are there in Libya. You know, when we elected Barack Obama, and I'll go on record saying that I voted for him because I wanted someone different than George Bush. Somebody who was calling for a change in everything, a change that we believe in, and yes, we can, and we could. Well, we did. Well, but is it really that much of a change? And when politicians say things, is it when they say things on the campaign trail and they end up doing something completely the opposite of that, shouldn't we, those that elected these people and elected them on that particular platform, shouldn't we be able to have like a fall back on something? You know, once they get elected, these people can't do anything they want to. You know, George Bush, when he was elected, he said that we're not going to be a police state in the world. We're not going to be a regime builders in the world. But what have we been doing since George Bush actually, until now, even though he's gone, but until now, we are in the regime building business. Something that George Bush said we're not going to do. Something that Barack Obama actually ran on the opposite of what George Bush was doing, and he wanted to change it. You know, is there really a big difference between Barack Obama and George Bush? Let's take a look at this picture. Who's this? Is this Barack Obama? Or is this George Bush? Or is it one and the same? You might say, well, this is Barack Obama. Well, that's George Bush. But actually, those two men, it turned out to be, when it comes to foreign policy, and this is something that we had always told you here on this program, when it comes to the United States foreign policy, there is one entity way above our president and way above our government that steps in and controls our foreign policy. Our presidents know that. Our candidates know that. They know who's above them. And they know when it comes time to jump, they will jump. You know, this thing with Libya, Obama said that he consulted with our allies. Well, that's wrong. We should not be consulting with our allies. We should be consulting with our people. We should be consulting with the representatives of our people. And that happens to be the Congress of the United States. That is something that Obama did not do, and that is something that George Bush did not do either. That proves to you, ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, in either case, in the case of Iraq, in the case of Afghanistan, and we know what Obama said on the campaign trail about Afghanistan and about Iraq. You know, we had something like 20,000 troops in Afghanistan, or 30,000 when Obama took control of the White House. Now we have about 130,000 troops. You know, before we jump into the Obama, Bush, and their doctrines, that sounds like that, you know, something that Sarah Palin did not really know what the heck was the Bush doctrine. Well, the Bush doctrine was that we are going to go before somebody, if we know that somebody is thinking, or if we think that someone is thinking about harming us, we're going to go and take them out. If we think, not if they have done anything, you know, just like in the case of Iraq. You know, Iraq, they lied to us, and he knows, you know, that this guy, George Bush, he has $1 billion a year agency to tell him what's going on in there, and they told him there's no weapons of mass destruction. But he wanted to believe the Israelis. He wanted to believe Douglas Feith, who was over the special, the Office of Special Operations or Special Project in the Pentagon, who cooked up that stuff about Saddam Hussein and Niger and the uranium. We're not going to get details of that. You know the whole story about the lies that Douglas Feith, who's an Israeli, by the way, just go look him up. Douglas Feith, he's an Israeli, but he was in our Pentagon, just like Paul Wolfowitz was our Homeland Security guy. No, I'm sorry. Paul Wolfowitz was the assistant to the Secretary of State. Chertoff was another Israeli, was our Homeland Security Director. Go see about those people, and you will know exactly what we're talking about. Now, they're gone. They're gone. They're not here. But the policy and the doctrine, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or if it's a Democrat in the White House. The people who control the government that you don't see, the shadow government that you don't see, that's the ones who control the foreign policy of the United States. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to kind of take a break here from Libya and Bush and Obama, and actually go into the Holy Land with a video, an interview with a couple of settlers and the brutal and the brutality of the Israeli army. They took the land of the Palestinians, who have been living on that land for thousands of years, told them, hey, look, God gave us this land, and we're going to kill you and take the land from you. Now, we always said this, but this is coming from the cow's mouth, or the horse's mouth, or the pig's mouth, whatever. So let's go to the horse's mouth. 11 believe, and why they justify the stealing, and that's, by the way, that is all of them like that, and we've been telling you this, but now the
Arab people here do hate me. They hate Jews. They hate the establishment of a Jewish state here.
Because they think this land is theirs, don't
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely a war over land, among other things. It's also a war between Islam and Judaism, but it's a war over the land. Here, as well as for Tel Aviv or for Jaffa or for Jerusalem, I think the Arabs also claim those areas as well. But one has to take into account, I think, your Bible. Christians as well as Jews can go read the Bible and find out who God promised the land to is clearly the Jews and the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we are those descendants. The Arabs are not.
There are Palestinian Arabs who are becoming more and more religious. They're turning to God rather than the PLO. I'm thinking about Hamas in particular. Yeah. And you're a religious Jew. What do you feel about this? Aren't you a bit worried about it?
I don't recognize their Quran as being a valid document as in terms of understanding God. We have our Torah, which we believe is divine truth from that was revealed to us at Sinai, and this is what we go by.
Do you feel this is Israel here?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because this is part of the land that God gave to Israel. Samson was here, and there's a myth that Jonah was thrown up here by the whale in Khan Yunis. That's why that's a neighboring Arab town. I feel a lot of history was here.
But is that sufficient to say that this is the state of Israel?
Yes. For me, it's insufficient.
But what about the thousands and thousands of Arabs who say this is our land, we've lived here for several generations? Why do you merely argue, okay, well, in the Bible, but that's thousands of years ago?
The whole reason why the state of Israel was given to the Jewish people in 1948 was because of our biblical claim. It had nothing to do with how many years anyone had lived anywhere. The only claim that the Jews have on this land that the Israeli people have is the Bible. And if we don't believe the Bible and the board, then we really have nothing to back our claim.
Well, because God gave it to them. Because God gave it to them 2,000 years ago. In reality, ladies and gentlemen, when you saw that the Israeli, the first guy, when he talked, he said, oh, we are the descendants. You know, number one, these people have lived on the land for 2,000 years. The Arabs, the Palestinians, they lived on the land for 2,000 years. These are the same people who at one time, and by the way, you know, Jews were not the only people living on the land in Palestine. There were many other, and even the Bible, if you want to go with the Bible names about what, you know, many of the different groups that have lived on the land, and they continued to live on the land. Then you get the Europeans who convert to Judaism. You know, that guy was not the descendant of Abraham, I can tell you that. You know, Abraham was a Semite, and that guy does not look like a Semite to me. That guy looks like he came from Poland or something. But yet, because God, and he said he does not believe in their Quran, you know, talking about the Muslims. Now remember, the people who have lived on the land, they continued to live on the land. Some of them were Jews. Some of them, when Christianity came about, they became Christians. And some of them, when Islam came about, they converted to become Muslims. But they have lived on the land before even Abraham came over there. You know, Abraham was not the first man to enter Palestine. Many of Abraham's people actually migrated to Palestine before Abraham did. So now because, and by the way, the Arabs, if you're going to see who are the descendants, who are the descendants of Abraham, it's not the Jews. Show me where it says, even if I want to go with the Bible or the Torah, where does it say that these are the Jews that are the descendants of Abraham? Well, I can tell you the Arabs are the descendants of Abraham. They are. No one, absolutely no one can dispute that fact. But that's 2,000 years ago. That's 2,000 years ago, and the only justification for these people to kill Palestinians and take over their land is because God promised it to them. You know, it just happened that Muslims do believe in the Torah, by the way, and they do believe in the Bible. See, Muslims believe, see, you know, Jews only believe in the master race. In Christianity, if you're not born again, and if you're not with Jesus, you're not going to heaven, you're going to hell. See, Islam is completely the opposite. Islam accepts Judaism as a religion, accepts Christianity as a religion, and it thinks of itself as continuation to these two religions. And it is willing to actually live with these two religions, plus many more. Islam is not a racist religion, but yet what do we have? 2,000 years ago, God. What about if it happens, you know, a lot of people don't believe in the Jewish God and the Christian God and the Muslim God, which, by the way, it happened to be the same God. What about if they don't believe in that? I don't know what is it with Europeans. They just think that they can go to other countries, other lands, butcher the people there, and take over. It happened right here in the United States. It happened in Australia. It happened in Canada. It happened in New Zealand. It happened in New Zealand. It happens everywhere. And it happened in Palestine, where Europeans went to Palestine, killed the people on the land, and they settled, and they're still butchering them. You figure. Anyway, we're going to jump back to, I just wanted to show you that it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling when you hear people say, oh yeah, God gave it to us 2,000 years ago. My goodness, it took God 2,000 years to bring you back. Even though Jews have lived, they have lived within Arab, not the Ashkenazis who converted the European Jews. You cannot tell me those were the descendants of Abraham. No. Okay, we're going to go back to Obama. You know, all we're doing here with Obama, can you bring me back to this camera, please? All we're doing with Obama is very much the same. Nothing changed. You know, it's just like taking one mask and putting the other mask on. That's basically what happened. You know, just like the picture. That's exactly what we did when we have, it's the same entity. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or if it's a Democrat. It's the same thing. You take off one mask and you put on the other one. You know, why I'm saying this? Because this man, and we're gonna move on and play a, let's play the first video, and then we'll come back and we'll set the stage for what we're gonna talk about. Let's do that. Okay. Now, where do you think this video is taking place at? Libya? Okay. Where do you think that took place at? You might say Libya. You might say those policemen with guns actually shot a protester who did not have a gun. They shot him point blank right there. Very short distance between them. They could have kicked him, but they shot him. Where do you think that took place at? Not in Libya. That took place in Bahrain. That's another Arab country that is having problems. Now, why we're not seeing the United States government saying, oh, we need to do the right thing? That's what Obama said about Libya. That, oh, he's killing civilians. He's butchering his people. How? And yesterday, last week on the program, I have challenged anyone, bring me a video of Gaddafi butchering his own people. Bring it to me. Bring it to me. I have made a challenge to everybody. Show me. Where are these massacres that he's talking about? Where are the massacres that, all I see now, again, just like I do all the time, I am not pro any of these regimes in the Middle East. I have said this, but I guess I'll go and say it just in case if we have new people watching us. I hate those regimes in the Middle East, and I have been calling for their removals, period. I have been calling for the people to uprise against their rulers. But I wanted the people. I did not want somebody in the CIA agitating the situation and making these people go out there in the streets. So who's Gaddafi is actually fighting? Well, let's see who's Gaddafi is fighting. These are not civilians. There's a civil war going on in Libya. These people that you're going to see some pictures of right now, these are people with guns. These are people with weapons. These are, they call them the revolutionaries. That's what the United States went on the side of these people. Yesterday was the first time that you have our news media actually talked about CIA teams, that the president had signed a covert operations to send CIA teams to work with the rebels. No, we told you on this program a month ago, we told you that CIA teams are on the ground working with the opposition, because at that time they were oppositions. They were not the revolutionaries, they were not the rebels. But right now, they are armed, and there are wars between them and the Gaddafi regime. Now, don't you think we should have had a discussion in Congress about this before we go and commit to bombing these people? Who's bombing? Who's killing? What is the difference between the United States and Gaddafi? What is the difference between Gaddafi and the rebels? What is the difference? It's everybody with guns shooting in a war that we got nothing to do with, just like the Iraq war. Well, somebody is pushing our buttons to go. Somebody's holding our hand and saying, here, pick up this gun and go shoot somebody. And that's exactly what we're doing without even consulting our own people. Let's see what Barack Obama actually, that was in Bahrain, what you saw. So why do we want to protect the people in Libya, where Gaddafi is fighting people with guns, but yet in Bahrain, people don't have guns, they're being killed by the regime, but yet, oh no, that's okay. That's a Gulf state area. We don't want to miss that relationship up. Oh yeah, then don't tell me about the goodness of your heart. Don't tell me because we are good people here in the United States and we're not going to stand by and watching a regime killing its own people. That's why we are in Libya. Well, why in the hell aren't we in Bahrain? If that's your reasoning, how come they don't show you what they show you in Bahrain? How come Anderson Cooper does not have people in Bahrain to stay on the phone crying because they're being butchered by their regime, just like they do in Libya? They all in together, ladies and gentlemen. The media and the government, they are all in together because they're controlled by the same people. They are controlled by the same entity that you don't see. Yeah, sure, we go and elect the president, but the powers that be that decides who's going in, who's next. Let's play this and let's see what Obama thinks. Let's see what Obama actually thought about this before he became a warmongering president, just like George Bush. Let's play.
George Bush and John McCain have a lot to answer for. They've got to explain why we are now in our sixth year, entering our sixth year of war in Iraq. We were supposed to be going over there for weapons of mass destruction that we never found. We were told that it was going to last a few months and cost a few $1 billion. We have now spent over $600 billion, thousands of lives lost, and we have not been made more safe. They're going to have to explain the fact that Osama bin Laden is still at large and is sending out videotapes with impunity. They need to answer for the fact that Al-Qaeda's leadership is stronger than ever because we took our eye off the ball in Afghanistan. They've got to answer for the fact that Iran is the greatest strategic beneficiary of our invasion in Iraq. It made Iran stronger, George Bush's policies. They're going to have to explain why Hamas now controls Gaza, Hamas that was strengthened because the United States insisted that we should have democratic elections in the Palestinian Authority. They're going to have to explain why it is that Iran is able to fund Hezbollah and poses the greatest threat to America and Israel and the Middle East in a generation. That's the Bush-McCain record on protecting this country. Those are the failed policies that John McCain wants to double down on because he still hasn't spelled out one substantial way in which he'd be different from George Bush when it comes to foreign policy. So
okay? That's what he thought before he became president. That's what he was running on. He was saying the failed policies of George Bush. Well, if I look at it now, that was before he was elected president. Now, if we look at it now, Iran is more stronger than when George Bush was in office. We look and see that we are in too many wars than when George Bush was in office. Afghanistan had about 20 to 30,000 American soldiers. Now it has 130,000 American soldiers. So his record is not George Bush. Why? Because it's the same regime, ladies and gentlemen. It is true that we flip-flop between Republicans and Democrats, but it's the same coin. You just flip it. Let's go to the other video.
And as Commander-in-Chief, I have determined that it is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan. We're in Afghanistan to prevent a cancer from once again spreading through that country. But this same cancer has also taken root in the border region of Pakistan. To abandon this area now and to rely only on efforts against al-Qaeda from a distance would significantly hamper our ability to keep the pressure on al-Qaeda and create an unacceptable risk of additional attacks on our homeland and our allies.
Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, this year's Nobel Peace Laureate.
This was 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen.
For the second time in just the first year of his presidency. In March, you will recall, this president announced that his new administration had concluded a careful policy review of the options available in Afghanistan then, and had decided to send 21,000 more troops. To put that first escalation in context, this is what American troop levels were like 8 years ago, the 1st December after we invaded. See that little tiny blip down there on the left? This is how they changed over time, all through the Bush administration and through, frankly, the election of Mr. Obama. This is what's happened during President Obama's first year in office. And this is what he's just announced he's going to do by next summer. And then 9 days after that, he flies to Oslo to get his Nobel Peace Prize. The president's speech tonight at West Point, in a way, is an awkward bookmark to the previous president's famous West Point speech when the Afghanistan war was only 8 months old, not 8 years old.
Our war on terror is only begun. But in Afghanistan, it was begun well.
Turns out that wasn't very true. And 8 years later, the next president is stuck explaining his choice among all the, frankly, pretty bad options available to fix Bush's supposedly begun well war. But President Bush bragging at West Point about how awesome he thought things had gone in Afghanistan at that point is not what that speech is remembered for. President Bush bragged in a lot of places about how awesome he thought things had gone in Afghanistan, even as both Osama bin Laden and Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban, not only survived, but survived unscathed and stayed in business as militant leaders, just now relocated eastward slightly. If Omar went from Kandahar to Quetta in Pakistan, that means he moved slightly less than the distance between Wichita and Topeka. No, President Bush's West Point speech is remembered not because he was uniquely wrong in his comments there about Afghanistan itself. He was wrong a lot about his comments about Afghanistan itself. That speech is remembered because it was at West Point where he unveiled what may have been the single most radical thing about his presidency.
Do you agree with the Bush doctrine?
In what respect, Charlie?
The Bush, well, what do you interpret it to be?
His worldview.
Before the Iraq War?
Unveiled the Bush doctrine. The proclamation that the United States would no longer reserve the right just to wage war against countries or forces that threatened us, but that we would wage war to stop the emergence of threats in the future.
If we wait for threats to fully materialize, we will have waited too long. The war on terror will not be won on the defensive. We must take the battle to the enemy, disrupt his plans, and confront the worst threats before they emerge.
Before the Bush presidency. President Obama tonight explaining his second escalation of the war in Afghanistan, announcing that the 32,000 Americans who were in Afghanistan when he took office will become 100,000 by next year. A war reborn in what the president is describing as his own image, his own strategic terms, but which is justified fundamentally by what sounds like the Bush doctrine. The administration admitting that we are not actually threatened now as a nation by Afghanistan.
Obviously, the good news that Americans should feel at least good about in Afghanistan is that the Al-Qaeda presence is very diminished. The maximum estimate is less than 100 operating in the country, no bases, no ability to launch attacks on either us or our allies.
No ability to attack us or our allies. Afghanistan poses no threat to us. And yet, our war there is being doubled and tripled in size. Why? It's because we think there might be a threat from Afghanistan in the future, if a safe haven for terrorism there reemerges in the future. In other words,
if we wait for threats to fully materialize, we will have waited too long. We must take the battle to the enemy, disrupt his plans, and confront the worst threats before they emerge.
Is the massive escalation of the war in Afghanistan announced tonight President Obama's own implementation of the preventive war Bush doctrine that Sarah Palin couldn't understand and that no one's really been able to justify?
Okay. So, is there really a difference between George Bush and the dove, Barack Obama? Change that we can believe in? Is there really a change? Was there any harm coming to us? Any danger coming to us from Iraq? No. Now, Al-Qaeda, and you heard Jim Jones, who was the National Security Advisor, 2 years ago he said there are less than 100 Al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. Now, we said we're going to go to Afghanistan to clean it up from Al-Qaeda. And we have 130,000 troops over there right now. 130,000 troops. That's not counting the support personnel that takes to actually support personnel. You need probably double that number. For what? What is the danger? What is the danger? Where is this war on terror? Was Libya danger in any way threaten the United States? Did Gaddafi threaten to harm American citizens? Did he threaten to invade the United States? You know, it was a very bad doctrine, the Bush doctrine. That is not a doctrine just because you think, and before those threats would even emerge, you're going to go and kill people before the threat even emerges. Now, if it does not emerge, that means it's not there. What are we doing in Libya? What are we doing in Libya? Was there any threat? No. Was there any threat even thinking? Was Gaddafi even thinking of any? No, it was not. Oh, we went there to protect the civilians. Sure, they can't find anything, so they play on your emotions and say, we have to go protect the civilians. Well, I'll tell you what, let's continue with the videos.
We did not ask for this mission, but we will fulfill it.
Now, the United States did not seek this outcome.
Your mission is defined. Your objectives are clear. Your goal is just.
Our goal is focused, our cause is just, and our coalition is strong.
Well, same speech. Same speech. No difference. Oh, we didn't ask for this. Oh, really? We didn't ask for Libya? Did Libya ask for us? Same thing, what George Bush said. Oh, we have a coalition. Really? Same thing. It's the same power that is controlling our president that is speaking. Our president is just coming on the screen just to show us his face. He's not the one talking. 3 teleprompters were there a couple of days ago for Obama to deliver their speech to us. Not his speech, their speech. The same speech that they had written for Bush. Now let's see. Let's go and play. Let's see what he said in that speech, and let's justify what he did. Or let's, as Americans, justify going and killing other people. Let's do it.
You know, men, the president stood before an oddly silent audience and spoke to 3 teleprompters as well as to millions of tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, not to mention several viewers outside of the United States. Near the end of his oratory, he really soared like a predator drone. Listen.
I've made it clear that I will never hesitate to use our military swiftly, decisively, and unilaterally when necessary to defend our people, our homeland, our allies, and our core interests. Born as we are, out of a revolution by those who longed to be free, we welcome the fact that history are leading the way. Because wherever people long to be free, they will find a friend in the United States. But let us also remember that for generations we have done the hard work of protecting
Okay.
our own people.
Hold on. Just pause that for a second. Okay. So now the United States is looking for people who want to be free, people who long to be free. Freedom is on the march. For 62 years, the Palestinians have been killed, oppressed, kicked out of their homes, massacred. You're lying. You are lying, Mr. President. You are lying, but you have to put it in a nice frame so the American people can go along with your murderers. With your murderers. Come on now. You want to help people who want to be free? Yeah, you got the Palestinian people that once, that you used to, you, Mr. President, you used to support Chicago. You supported the Palestinian people. You used to be on their side. You used to go into their demonstrations and demonstrate with them. Yeah, you want to help people who want to be free? History is on the move. What about the guy in Bahrain that was shot at close range? That's not people who want to be free. And you will not hesitate to choose force swiftly and decisively when our people are threatened, going out there and threatening people in their homes. That's what we're doing. Continue.
We know that our own future is safer, our own future is brighter, if more of mankind can live with the bright light of freedom and dignity.
Now, Stephen, have you ever heard a bolder proclamation of, the Bush Doctrine?
Yeah, I heard it from George W. Bush about 8 years ago. The Obama doctrine sounds an awful lot like the Bush doctrine. The biggest apparent difference is the one that it starts with a big O, so even liberals can love it. But it is not the Bush doctrine. This thing is all wrapped up in Samantha Powers and her responsibility to protect theory. And what R2P is, as they like to call it, it's not a droid from Star Wars. What it does is it puts American soldiers in harm's way to protect anybody who can curry favor in the United Nations. What it is not about is the defending America's vital interests. But 8 years ago, I thought it would be radical. I thought maybe we should have landed 3 or 4 divisions on the Syrian coast, fought our way to Damascus, then to Baghdad, then to Tehran, gotten back on our ships in the Persian Gulf and said, and don't make us come back here. And we would have been spared an awful lot of grief. Can you see the Obama doctrine doing anything like that?
Well, Bill Wilson, you heard the president. We're fearless. We're ready to lead, standing with the oppressed, because we know a free planet is a safer planet. Isn't that just the kind of red meat that patriots have longed to hear from this president?
Yeah, but patriots don't believe it. I don't believe it. You don't believe it. Nobody believes it. When he talks about, well, I will not hesitate to use America's armed forces immediately and strongly. He did exactly that. He exactly did hesitate to use America's armed forces as long as he could. That rebellion was going on for 30 days. If, in fact, we do want to save the rebels, which I think is not necessarily the game to play here, by the way, but if we were going to do that, maybe we should have used that military action on day 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 25, and not on day 30 when there were only enough of them left so that Gaddafi had another 12 to 24 hours to finish them off. So this business about we will immediately deploy our forces is just a lie. It's an absolute lie. And secondly, what he is doing here, I'm probably the 3,000th person to point this out on the air, is exactly what this man made his entire career in the Senate and his entire 2000 campaign complaining about when George W. Bush did it. For him to stand there and say the exact same things that George Bush did, and to wrap himself in the flag and say, this is our heritage of our great nation. I just don't know what to say about that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We know what he said on the campaign trail. We know what he said to you. Now, is what he is doing comes even close to what he said? Of course not. Of course not. Now, is what he's doing in line with what George Bush was doing? Of course, yes. Only when it comes to foreign policy. Because foreign policy is not controlled by the United States. Our policy is not our policy. It is somebody else's policy. Now, who benefited out of what is going on in the Middle East? Well, it's somebody who actually said this over 40 years ago of exactly what they want to do. You see, like we have pointed out here many times, over and over again, these revolutions in the Middle East, the timing of all these revolutions should be the proof that all along somebody else who wanted to do this, and that somebody else talked about it. Israel have talked about this. And I always refer people to many documents, but there are 3 different documents that you really need to go and study, and then the whole thing becomes very clear to you. Now, after you study those 3 documents, come back to me and tell me if you still don't understand it. Then maybe we can give you some more help and some more pointers in understanding what is happening. No one out there can tell me that there is a benefit for us in Libya. You want to talk about oil? We did not have a problem getting Gaddafi's oil, period. Period. We were getting as much oil from Libya as we want. As it was the same case that we went to Iraq, it was not for oil, because we were getting Saddam's oil even when he was under siege. Even when he was under embargo, we were still getting his oil. So don't tell me that we went there to protect our oil interest. We did not. What we are doing, and anyone who is an observant on what is happening in Libya, understand that they are working on having one part of the country controlled by the rebels, another part of the country controlled by Gaddafi. The division of Libya. Now they know and they understand that the opposition, that opposition will not be able to rule. It's divided. And there are probably more people on this side than they have on the side of the oppositions. Civil war, division of the country. And that's exactly what the Zionist plan for the Middle East called for. Go read it. Read that plan first. The Zionist plan for the Middle East. Also, it is also known as Strategies for Israel in the 1980s. Go see it. So write that one down. Strategies of Israel in the 1980s. And it's the same thing also as the Zionist plan for the Middle East. Read that one. And once you finish reading that one, then read the second document that I'm going to give you. It's called Clean Break. Just Clean Break. Put that in your search engine and search it. Read that one after you read the Zionist plan for the Middle East. And once you finish with the Clean Break document, which is Strategy for Securing the Realm, that was written in, and many others back ones that we came to know them as the neocons. Not when they wrote that document back in 1996, but when George Bush became the President of the United States. That is the George Bush, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So now when you, not the Father, so now when you read that Clean Break, Strategy for Securing the Realm, you will understand why these same people who wrote that document became in policy. They tried to pass that through in 1996, but the president at that time was Clinton. Bill Clinton refused to go along with their doctrine. Netanyahu was the prime minister of Israel. So they could not pass it through in 1996, but they did when George Bush became the president, and they put these same people within the George Bush administrations. They talked about that. They talked about that. They said, we don't care who the president is, but we are going to supply the president with our advisors, those advisors who will work with him, those advisors that we have groomed to govern in the shadows of the president. And that's exactly what they said, and that's exactly what they did. They said you can't have the president to be from among the people, the corrupt people. But we are going to supply our own advisors who will actually be making the policy and the decisions. That's why they supplied George Bush with Paul Wolfowitz, Douglas Feith, and Richard Pearl. Richard Pearl, the same Richard Pearl that on September 12, 2001, was at the Oval Office early in the morning telling the president that he must attack Iraq. That was September 12, 2001. One day after 9/11, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, but the United States, that is, government, went and attacked Iraq, destroyed it, killed Saddam, removed Saddam Hussein from power. That's exactly what they said in the clean break document that they wrote back in 1996, that the removal of Saddam Hussein from power is an Israeli. They wrote that back in 1996, and they came in 2003 to execute what they wrote, to make room for the Zionist plan for the Middle East and to make room for the supremacy of Israel. But Israel could not be a supreme power if you have all these Arab countries around it, and they are, even though they are divided, but the people of those countries are not divided. Even though the governments were divided, but the people were not divided. The people around them in all of these 22 Arab countries thought of themselves as one people. So how can we make the Arab world look like Latin America, where you have separate countries, even though at one time they used to speak the same language and the same religion, but now they think of themselves totally different from the other guy next door, with no connection, none whatsoever. So how can we do that to the Arabs? The Latinization of the Arab world. That's exactly what you are witnessing now. You are witnessing the division of these Arab countries into religious sectors, into ethnic sectors. They are fueling the sectarian war. That's exactly what they said, by the way. Go read the Zionist plan for the Middle East, you will see that. And then they wrote one for us. It's called Project for the New American Century. Go read that one. That's the third document that I promised you I will give you. 3 documents: the Zionist plan for the Middle East, the Clean Break document, and the Project for a New American Century. You will see where George Bush doctrine came from. The preemptive strike, the unilateral moves to go and destroy countries. You will see where all these doctrines came from. Nowhere except the Zionists who were in control of our country and who are still and remain in control of our country, our lives, our money, and our media. Why are you seeing on TV, why are you seeing the war in Libya being covered as a butcher wanting to kill his own people? Why? Do you really believe? Even though I'm not taking his side, he can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. Okay? But you're not seeing the truth. You're not seeing what is happening. Who benefits out of all this? It's the same entity that benefited out of Iraq. It's not the United States. It is not the United States that benefited out of Iraq, but who cares? These people don't care what happens to the United States. These people don't care if the United States go to hell. They don't care. They want to do one thing and one thing only. They want to control the world out of Jerusalem. That's what they want to do. They want to control the world out of Jerusalem, and you know what? Don't tell me that they are not. Because everyone who wants to be something in this country, before he even goes to become, before he even announces his candidacy for either Congress, Senate, or any, they go to Jerusalem. Sarah Palin was there a couple of weeks ago. He was there, she was there 2 weeks ago to see her chances, if she stands a chance of actually running, becoming a candidate. They have to go to Israel. They have to go to Jerusalem. Why? Everybody has to go to Jerusalem. Obama did, Clinton did, McCain did, both Clintons did, George Bush did. Everybody who wants to be somebody in the United States has to go and get the blessings from Jerusalem. You want to tell me I'm wrong? You want to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about? For 10 years we've been telling you this. For 10 years we have told you what they're going to do in the Arab world. For 10 years we told you they are going to play on these fault lines within the Arab world because they identified those fault lines in every country and they said, we can do this, and do this. We told you that. We have been telling you this 10 years, for 10 years. You know what? The Arabs don't even know it. Arab leaders don't even know this. When you tell them, hey, look, this is a conspiracy. This is not. They tell you, you're crazy. These are revolutions by the Arab people because they are oppressed. Yes, they are oppressed. And yes, every Arab country was suitable. Was boiling at the surface, and all they had to do is agitate the surface and the Arab people will revolt. And yes, it is true, people who want freedom on the streets. But who's using them? Who's using their plight? Who's prostituting their plight? Who's prostituting this country? It's these masked men that you look at every day of your life. It's the TV that you are looking at. Anyway, that's all we have for you tonight. But, Amr has been missing, I guess, to tell you good night. So tonight he is ready and he's going to tell you good night. We missed him the last 3 times. So come on, come closer, come closer. There you go. Right. Here he is, and he is going to tell you good night, and we will see you next Thursday. And look at the camera and tell them good night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week, same place, same time. All right, you stream.